Story 1. In 1857, the United States eliminated the half-cent coin. One of the reasons they got rid of it was because it lacked buying power. You may think to yourself, well, sure, it was only a half cent. But the thing is, when adjusted for inflation, the half cent's modern value is 15 cents. So, when you ask if I'd be fine getting rid of the penny, I say we should get rid of the nickel and the dime with it. Story 2. If you see a penny on the street, do you bother bending over and picking it up? If not, there's your answer. Canadian here. I love not seeing pennies anymore, but I don't remember the last time I paid with cash. With card transactions, it's the same, no rounding. So the impact is going to be less than you think. Story 3. We already do this in Canada. We abolished the penny 12 years ago. We just round everything to the nearest nickel. 0 to 2 rounds down to 0, 3 to 5 rounds up to 5. 5 to 7 rounds down to 5, 8 to 10 rounds up to 10. Story 4. Traveling to Canada was awesome. No pennies. It made carrying change easier, and if I recall, it rounded down to the nearest 5 cents. I remember asking, but do not remember the details. But yes, we should have eliminated the penny decades ago. Story 5. Get rid of the thing. Such a waste of all resources and time involved. You have the bare mining to get the zinc and copper plating, refining that, shipping it off, rolling it out, sending it again to the treasury, the effort of tool and die makers making the dies and energy running the punch machines, the waste material sheets after it's punched. The paper used in rolling them up, trucking again to send to banks, trucking again from banks to stores, cashiers having to count them every time, all for someone to get it and toss them on the ground or throw them in a bucket to take to the bank and repeat most of the processes all over. Story 6. About freaking time. Now get rid of the nickel and the dime too. You cannot buy anything with them. I would have them add the dollar coin. Coins are still better than paper money. Story 7. No one would or should. There is zero reason to not have everything be whole numbers or an increment of a quarter. How many times have you used a dime, nickel, or penny in the last year, 5 years, or 10? For me, it's never. I use a quarter for Aldi every week, and when I am buying vending machine sodas at work, every other day. Story 8. Michael's already does this at the store near me, and I only noticed because an old lady made a fuss about not receiving any pennies in her change. The poor teenager had to explain to her that they don't even carry pennies anymore. I was honestly more concerned that the lady wanted pennies. Story 9 should have happened already, just like we should have switched to dollar coins and, more controversially, to the metric system. But trying to get Americans to accept virtually any change is difficult, and it takes actual leadership to do so. Hence, we do nothing. Story 10. Been doing it in Canada for forever. Makes sense. Get it? In seriousness, it seemed weird at first. But now, who cares? Rounding up or down is an automatic thought. Story 11. It costs 3 cents to mint a penny, so I'm all for discontinuing that. In fact, since a dime is worth less than a penny used to be, discontinue the nickel while you are at it and save even more. And remove $1 bills from circulation as well. Story 12. I haven't used cash in years, but I'm somewhat against it just on principle. If we rounded everything down, great. Get rid of it. But let's be real, the price won't be rounded down. Is 4 cents a big deal? No, it's entirely a principle thing. Story 13. People complain when the price goes up 5 cents, laugh out loud, and who keeps the extra profit when it's rounded up? Wouldn't that encourage companies to set prices that would always be forced to round up instead of down? Story 14. As a Canadian who spends a lot of time in the United States, please get rid of the penny. It weighs our pants down. Also, the single-use plastic bag as well, please. Story 15. I have already removed pennies from the bar I help manage. I refuse to have them in the register. I round to the nearest 0.05 with 0.03 going up. So far, no one has complained, although I guess I could not get away with this if I worked for a corporation. Story 16. It will never happen if the penny lobby has their way. No, seriously, there is a lobby to keep pennies, funded in part by the company that makes the coin blanks and not actually any zinc manufacturers. The main idea they propose, with no evidence, is that people would buy less if the prices were rounded up. I am guessing because there is supposedly a significant amount of people who get fooled by something being $9.99 and not $10 and think they are getting a deal. I would say, why not just make it $9.95 then? Story 17, rounded down, that's a good joke. We all know it would only be rounded up. Prices that use pennies are usually 0.49 or 0.99, so those would easily be rounded up by 1 cent. The only other instance where pennies would be needed is taxes, since it's a percentage of the total. The government will want tax rounded up, not down. I can't see a situation where it would be rounded down. I don't care if they eliminate pennies, though. Story 18. I feel like this is the natural occurrence of a nation's economy as time goes on. I remember growing up in Colombia, all the different coins that went out of circulation because their denomination was too small and the creation of higher denomination bills and coins. I guess in the United States that isn't that common, but in reality, it's no big deal. Story 19. We have been doing that on United States military bases abroad for decades now. It turns out that shipping loose change back and forth costs money. I am definitely all for it. Story 20. Less than zero. I would be thrilled. Nobody is lamenting the loss of 2 cents, except the lobbyists who sell blanks to the United States Mint. Like all lobbyists, they deserve to be unemployed. Story 21. I can't even remember the last time I handled a penny. Even then, it was only because I got it as change and promptly dropped it in the leave a penny tray at the register. Story 22. Screw that. Corporations and government will just find a way to always round in their favor. I'm petitioning to bring back the half-cent, 2-cent, and 3-cent coins. Story 23. Frankly, anything smaller than a quarter feels like a waste of effort. I go by Skyrim rules of value to weight. Dimes, nickels, and pennies just aren't worth their weight, inconvenience, and noise to me. In rare instances that I use cash, anything smaller than a quarter gets left at the register or stacked outside the front door for unsuspecting passersby. Story 24. I don't carry change or pay with change, so I really couldn't care less. Also, laughing out loud, there will be no rounding down. Think of all the free profits by rounding up all the time. Story 25. I lived in France in the 1990s before they used the euro. They had centime coins that were effectively worth less than a penny, and shops just rounded up or down to the nearest penny. No one cared because it was such a small amount. Applying that same logic here, you'd round to the nearest nickel. If something costs 88 cents, it would round to 90 cents. It's not even that hard or difficult, and you just adjusted it. This is all adjusted for inflation. They had 10 franc and 20 franc coins, comparable to a $1 and a $5 coin. That was honestly kind of nice. You could have 8 coins in your pocket, the equivalent of $20, adjusted for inflation to about $40. And it would be enough walking around money if you wanted to get some fast food or have a couple of beers. Story 26. When the half penny was discontinued, it was worth 10 cents. It is long past time to discontinue the penny and nickel too. Story 27. It is all laid out here in this New York Times Magazine article on the penny from a few months ago, October 2024, that explains why Americans do not have the will to do this. But it is dumb that we do not. Kind of explains why we do dumb things like elect a charlatan like Trump. Just a brief part of the article. Most pennies produced by the United States Mint are given out as change but never spent. This creates an incessant demand for new pennies to replace them, so that cash transactions that necessitate pennies, for example, any concluding with a sum whose final digit is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, or 9 can be settled. Because these replacement pennies will themselves not be spent, they will need to be replaced with new pennies that will also not be spent, and so will have to be replaced with new pennies that will not be spent, which will have to be replaced by new pennies. In other words, we keep minting pennies because no one uses the pennies we mint. Story 28. I don't see the extreme need to get rid of it. Maybe produce fewer of them. People are very focused on streamlining efficiency nowadays, and a lot of nuance and culture gets set aside. Look at cursive handwriting. Story 29. Get rid of it. The only reason we have it is because the penny zinc supplier spends a bunch of money lobbying politicians to keep the penny. Story 30. Not at all. Eliminate the penny, nickel, dime, quarter, and dollar because they just are not worth anything at all. Besides, by the time Trump is done printing money, the United States dollar will be toilet paper. Story 31. Not upset at all. 30 years overdue, and everyone knows it. The only change I would notice would be at gas stations, and that's just the signage change. Would a gallon now be 3.50 instead of 3.48? Story 32. Terrible idea. People shouldn't have to calculate that much before buying something to see if they need to adjust or split transactions to avoid being overcharged. Story 33. I would consider it a step in the right direction towards an effective government. If we can't even get rid of the penny, which costs more than a penny to produce, then seriously, what can we do, right? It's not like vending machines have ever accepted them. Story 34. Only upset at the colossal waste and resources of time such an endeavor would entail. The level of effort to implement and enforce such a monetary decree would far outstrip any putative savings one might conjecture recouping from it. Find a real problem to solve, please. Story 35. Well, I think there are a few important things to consider. Let me lay them out. There are so many bigger issues that require more immediate attention. This is a trivial issue that relates to everyone because everyone in the United States has a penny near them. Hence, it feels impactful. But if we got rid of pennies for the sake of costs, it would truly be insignificant in comparison to taxing the rich their fair share. There is a part of me that would be sad. I think pennies have a certain character to them that is unique. But those are just my thoughts. Story 36. Here is an issue. Let's say you have a savings account at a bank with a balance of $500.97. The penny is eliminated and either you or the bank loses or gains the difference. It is not a big deal if you lose 3 cents yourself or if you gain 2 cents. It is a very big deal to the bank, which holds not only your account but millions of others. Story 37. How would this rounding apply to credit cards? Would banks no longer track to 1 cent? When advertising a price, can you no longer say 99 cents? Would we round per item or the total? Story 38. Every price you get with 0.99 in it would become a little more expensive for no good reason. I do not use cash much anymore, so it would not even benefit me. Story 39. I think pennies should still be used. I don't want prices to go higher. Just don't make any more pennies. This will kickstart a disappearance of all coins and an even worse price hike on things because there is no penny or cents. I know people don't like them, but they still have value. Don't make the inflation worse right now. Story 40. The penny needs to go and also the nickel. When you can literally buy nothing with it, what use is it? Canada got rid of the penny years ago, and no one noticed. It averages out to 0 when you round up sales to the nearest nickel. You could round to the nearest dime and it is still zero-sum. Story 41. Round up or down on cash transactions. In the digital age, there is no reason to allow corporations to round pricing. Everything would get rounded up. Physical money is the only way to guarantee privacy, so I would tread lightly on allowing it to be taken away in any capacity. We are the wealthiest nation in the world, and people are worried about the waste in minting coins. Have you seen a Department of Defense audit? Story 42. Eliminating the penny has been suggested as saving $200 to $300 million per year. Producing a penny costs 3 cents, while, of course, it is only worth 1. And yet, we keep shooting ourselves in the foot over this. Story 43. So the Canadian system doesn't round all prices to the nickel. It rounds your total. So each transaction after tax moves up or down 2 cents. Not each item. It's a non-issue. Story 44. Hell no. Sometimes I need a washer or 3, and drilling a hole in a penny is cheaper than buying washers. I just wish we'd put a hole in the center of them years ago. Story 45. I'm in my mid-30s and have dealt with several cashiers younger than me who did not know the value of each of the coins. I'm going to say eliminating the penny will make it easier for these individuals. Story 46. They should have already done this decades ago. Each penny costs about 2.5 cents to mint, a total waste. Living in Australia now, they have been doing this for years already. Story 47. Knowing this economy and our corrupt government, I would not like my prices rounded up. If you're suggesting that they would actually round down, maybe you should work for the Federal Reserve instead. Story 48. It's surprising that so many people think eliminating the penny, the physical coin, would affect pricing in the digital realm. If I buy something that totals $9.98 after tax and pay with a card or Apple Pay or any other digital method, I'm not going to be charged $10. Eliminating the penny affects cash transactions, not digital transactions or accounting. Story 49. Finally, when the half-cent coin was discontinued, it was worth something like 34 cents today. We could stand to get rid of more. Edit. I do keep some quarters on hand for my annual trip through the West Virginia toll road, except for last year when I was one short. Story 50, please, already. We pay more for pennies and their storage than the value of pennies. Only the United States could keep making a coin that costs millions of dollars a year to produce and is worth a fraction of that. Story 51. I'd love it. In fact, while you're at it, get rid of the nickel and dime as well. If you can't buy a single item for the amount of money that it represents, you shouldn't have it anymore. Story 52. Anything under a quarter does not matter, and honestly, do not lie to yourself. Round up or down, laugh out loud. If it is 0.01, it is rounding up to 0.25, laugh out loud. You know it is. Story 53. Ireland here. We got rid of 0.01 and 0.02 cent coins. They literally weren't worth the metal they were made of. We round to 0.05 and everything is still overpriced, but it's the same as when those coins existed.